In March of 2022, during an ordinary afternoon in the New York City subway, something unthinkable happened. A 78-year-old woman, barely 5 feet tall and holding onto a cane, became the target of a sudden, violent outburst. No warning. No words. Just a single, shocking moment that left the train car frozen in disbelief. Passengers looked away. Phones stayed in pockets. And the man who struck her. He had no idea who she was, and even less of an idea what was about to happen next. Because in a city of millions, justice doesn't always come from a courtroom, sometimes, it rides the train. What followed will shake you. Make you angry. Maybe even change the way you look at people around you. So buckle in, this is not just another viral video story. Hit like, subscribe, and let's go. Her name was Evelyn Carter. A retired schoolteacher from Queens, Evelyn had ridden the subway nearly every day for over 50 years. She knew its sounds, its smells, even the timing of each stop like the back of her wrinkled hand. Mornings were her favorite, quieter, slower, filled with familiar faces and kind nods. On that Tuesday, she wore her favorite blue coat, the one her late husband bought her in '89, and clutched a small bag of groceries from the corner store near 82nd Street. Evelyn wasn't rich, but she was steady. Kind. The sort of woman who still wrote birthday cards by hand and carried extra tissues in her purse, just in case. But that day, something felt off. The platform was louder. The train more crowded than usual. And when she stepped into the car, her seat, the one she always took by the window, was gone. Small details. But sometimes, it's the smallest things that whisper, something isn't right. The train jolted harder than usual as it pulled away from the station, making Evelyn clutch the metal pole tighter than she had in years. Across from her, a young man paced restlessly, mumbling under his breath, sharp, clipped words no one could quite make out. His eyes flicked from face to face like he was searching for something, or someone. Passengers stole glances, then quickly looked away. A mother pulled her child closer. An elderly man shifted to another seat. But no one said a word. Evelyn, standing just a few feet away, felt her stomach twist. It wasn't fear, not yet, more like an ache of knowing. Something was off. The man's energy felt wrong. The train was moving, but time suddenly felt still. It was the kind of silence that comes before a storm. And Evelyn, without knowing why, gripped her cane just a little tighter. The man began to talk louder now. Not to anyone in particular, just into the stale subway air, as if arguing with shadows. His hands twitched. His pacing turned into jerking steps, back and forth like a trapped animal. Evelyn kept her gaze down, trying to appear invisible, but she could feel the shift in the car. People were no longer just uncomfortable, they were afraid. A teenage girl quietly turned off her music. An MTA worker at the far end tapped his radio, but didn't move. Then came a sound Evelyn would never forget, a low, guttural laugh, like something had snapped inside him. That's when she noticed it, the man wasn't holding on to anything. As the train curved, everyone swayed, except him. Like he didn't care if he fell, or what he might fall into. The lights above flickered once, briefly. Then silence again. Thick. Waiting. Without warning, the man lunged. Not toward a threat, not in defense, but toward Evelyn. A swinging arm, wild and fast, connected with her shoulder, sending her crashing sideways into the cold metal railing. A gasp rippled through the car, sharp and instant. Someone screamed. Evelyn didn't fall, not completely, but the cane clattered to the floor like a gunshot. She clung to the rail, dazed, her mind trying to process what just happened. Why her? Why now? And then, through the shock, through the ringing in her ears, she heard something strange, footsteps. Firm, quick. A figure stood up at the far end of the train, a man in his 60s, gray at the temples, wearing an old NYPD jacket, faded but unmistakable. Evelyn blinked, and in that instant, it was like the air changed. Not fear, something colder. Something final. Because sometimes, the wrong move doesn't just wake up a crowd, it wakes up someone you never should have touched. The train screeched slightly as it neared the next tunnel, but no one noticed. All eyes were fixed on the man in the NYPD jacket. He moved with quiet precision, stepping between passengers, his gaze locked on the attacker. No words. Just the slow, terrifying certainty of someone who's seen too much, and won't let this go unanswered. Evelyn, still gripping the pole, looked up and something in her chest twisted. Recognition. That face, it wasn't a stranger. It was Officer Raymond Holt, retired in 2005 after a decorated career, famous in the neighborhood for one thing: he never walked away from injustice. But he hadn't been seen in years. And now here he was, eyes burning, hand near his waistband, not for a weapon, but for a badge, old and worn, still pinned under the jacket. The man who hit her. He didn't know who he'd touched. But the rest of the car did. And slowly, one by one, phones began to rise. Because this wasn't just one man's madness, it was a public test of courage. And the city was watching. The train hadn't stopped. Not yet. It roared through the dark like a vein pulsing through the city's heart, but inside, the silence was deafening. The man, the one who struck Evelyn, suddenly realized something had changed. Not just the old cop walking toward him, not just the phones recording his every move. It was the air, heavy now, expectant, like the car itself was holding its breath. He backed away, yelling something no one really heard, but no one flinched. Raymond Holt didn't stop. He reached into his jacket, not for violence, but for truth, and held up the badge. Not flashing it. Holding it like a mirror. A challenge. The man froze. And then, he ran. He tried, at least. But the doors were still shut. And between him and escape stood not just Holt, but a wave of silent passengers who finally stood up. Not with fists. But with presence. With witness. It was no longer just Evelyn's moment. It was theirs. And yet, the question burned: would they act, or just film? For a moment, chaos erupted. The man lunged again, not at Evelyn this time, but at Holt. A final, desperate move. The car rocked as the train entered another curve, and Holt stumbled back, hitting the wall hard. The attacker saw his chance. He ran, shoving past an elderly couple, nearly knocking a stroller to the floor. Screams filled the air. Phones dropped. Someone cried out for help. And Evelyn, still standing, bruised and shaking, watched it all unfold through a fog of pain and disbelief. This was it. The city at its worst. No one stopping him. Just panic, confusion, fear. But then, something broke through. A voice. Young. Firm. Stop him. A man in his 20s, a stranger, blocked the aisle. Another followed. And another. Not cops. Not heroes. Just passengers who'd had enough. The attacker turned, but there was nowhere left to run. Not this time. The people, silent for so long, finally remembered they had a voice. And Evelyn? She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. When the train finally screeched to a halt at the next station, officers were already waiting. Someone had pressed the emergency button. Someone had called ahead. But the arrest itself? That was just a form. The man was already pinned, not by force, but by presence, surrounded by strangers who chose not to look away. Evelyn sat now, someone's coat draped over her shoulders, a cup of water trembling slightly in her hands. Her cane was returned, bent, but not broken. Just like her. Officer Holt stayed nearby, silent, watching the scene unfold like he had so many times before, but this time, from the outside. One of the young men who stood up offered Evelyn a simple sentence, "You're safe now, ma'am." And for the first time in what felt like hours, she believed it. The attacker, cuffed and swearing, locked eyes with Evelyn. But there was no fear left in her gaze, only quiet, undeniable strength. The kind that outlives violence. The kind that changes people. Evelyn never took the subway alone again, not because she was afraid, but because she was never really alone anymore. After that day, something shifted. Neighbors she'd passed for years now stopped to check on her. The bakery near her building started setting aside her favorite rye bread, just in case. And Officer Holt? He visited once a week. No badge, no uniform, just a man who'd seen what silence can cost. The video went viral, of course. But what mattered more were the comments no one expected, from people who admitted they'd once looked away, and wouldn't again. Cities don't change in a day. But maybe, just maybe, they change one train car at a time. So here's the question, if you were there, would you have stood up? Or would you still be holding your phone? Think about it. Share this story. And if it moved something in you, hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments, what would you have done?